This segment's being sponsored by the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Join us in preserving and protecting Tennessee's wildlife.
In the outdoor world that we all love, there are so many names to choose from and to follow. If I were to ask you, what is your favorite camouflage pattern? Chances are you just thought of a name. If I were to ask what's your favorite rifle or shotgun, you just thought of another name. How about your favorite boat or pickup truck? You just thought of a name. Names are important. My last name being Buffalo, you don't ever hear that. We are a small herd. But I take great pride in the history of my name. Names are significant. The Apostle Paul tells us in the book of Philippians chapter 2 that Jesus Christ humbled himself to take on the appearance of man, and he was obedient to death, even death on a cross. And because of this, God exalted him and gave him a name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee will bow in heaven, in earth, and under the earth, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. In our world that we live in, there are many names to follow. It's our prayer that you follow the name and the person of Jesus Christ. And if you'd like to know more about this man named Jesus, we would be honored to share that with you. Reach out to us on our Facebook page at From the Blind Outdoors. Let us hear from you. And as always, keep shooting straight.
All right, guys, this week's call-in segment's being sponsored by our friends over at Taylor's Archery. Y'all can find them at 100 East Lauderdale Street in Tullahoma, Tennessee, or y'all can give them a call at 931-563-7706. Let owner Tracy Taylor and Cam and all the rest of the crew take care of all your archery needs, and be sure to tell them thank you for all they do for us here at the show. All right, we're going to go ahead and open up those phone lines now. So if you guys have got any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and call in now at 615-737-7767. And while we're waiting on some of those calls to come in, Wes, I want to talk a little bit about the hunt that we're in the middle of tonight. It's early rut, I should say, early November, and the deer, they're chasing really hard then. You've got a lot of bucks pushing around, a lot of does are coming in, so there's just a lot of action going on. It's a very high octane point of the season, so to speak.
That's the days we look forward to.
That's right. That's the days we look forward to. And, now we've pushed on through the end of November and gotten into early December. And things are different now, aren't they? I mean, it's a lot different ball game now.
Yeah. I mean, the majority of the does in Middle Tennessee have been bred. There's some areas across the state that, we may not be past that peak, but in most areas the peak's gone. Yeah. And so now we're transitioning into winter feeding patterns. Food sources are important as we move on. Yeah. You're going to have the does that's coming back in heat in 28 days that didn't get bred. Yeah. And some of them can come in. I mean, research has shown, 7 or 8 times every 28 days. Yeah. So, I mean, we could have breeding, taking place all through the rest of the season. And to me, this is one of the better times to kill, a giant buck.
I think this is when the bigger ones end up getting shot every year.
They got to do a little bit. It's a little bit harder for them to look. They got to look harder.
Yeah.
There's not
as much cover on the trees to keep them covered up. There's several advantages to that, but you're right. They have to search further. Right. They don't have as much cover helping them out. And then one thing too, this time of year when you spoke about the does that didn't get bred, you've got that too. You've also got your yearling does.
Exactly.
And they don't come until later. Now here's the difference in those that makes a big difference to me, in my opinion. When those older does come in, they're still old mature does, and they're not exactly stupid. They're still fairly careful about what they're doing. They get a lot of bucks in trouble, but when these young ones come in, they do make a lot of mistakes. Yeah. And so you get one of those, she comes into season, she comes to the middle of the farm, and this is that time of year, there might be 5, 6, 7 bucks with her, following behind. So it's definitely not over. That is probably the most asked question I get this time of year for sure is the rut over?
Right. And usually when I speak of the rut, I'm usually talking about the peak times.
Right.
But,
and that's what most people think of.
Of course, the rut is all year long, all season long. But you're right. When when those fawns get to be in Tennessee area, 65 to 70 pound range,
Yeah.
they're going to come back in.
That's right.
They're going to come into their first estrus cycle.
Yep. So once they get on that winter feeding pattern, start putting on that last little bit of weight.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's that's going to come around at that point in time.
Yeah.
But that is something to think about too. Is just the fact of that. And you mentioned food. You want to be on food right now. It's
Right.
all about food. Does are going to be on the food, and bucks are going to be on the food. Now I've got bucks, quite a few, getting back together. Like
Right.
they're starting to bachelor back up. But they're, where they're hanging out, right there in the food plots, right around the edges of them. They're
Exactly.
waiting. They know where to be.
And too, I'll have people that say, well, I don't have no food plots, I don't have no fields or whatever. Well, that's when you just go read and sign.
That's
you
right.
look for foot sign. You look for heavily, fresh, a lot of good foot sign in your woods. There's still red oaks. Are going to start coming into play more and more.
There's plenty of browse out there without food plots. I mean, I use green fields, on the places that I have that I can. But we talked about this earlier too. But there's plenty of deer lives on privet and acorns and honeysuckle and everything. I mean, you don't have to have food plots. But the point is, you do still need to figure out what it is they're eating.
You need
if
to find that primary food source.
Figure out what they're eating, and more importantly than that, if you don't have the food source itself on your place, you need to figure out how they're getting there, how they're getting back. Just this morning when I was out doing some scouting, I found an area that I told you about. It was just lucky for me, it was a muddy area, just a wet standing area, but because of that mud, for some reason there was just hundreds of deer tracks coming across this mud in an area I've never put a camera, never paid much attention to. I mean, I've seen deer there, but I set a camera there, and this evening, I mean, I've already had multiple pictures, 7, 8, 9 does in groups coming by here. Why they're doing it right now, I don't know. But just walking around this afternoon for a couple hours, I learned a lot. I found another little travel corridor I didn't really expect, and a lot of times just searching around this time of year, because you can see sign better when they're beating their way through the woods right now. All these leaves are down. It's almost like mud path. If they're walking it enough in those woods, you can really find that sign.
Right.
And that helps a lot.
And just staying persistent and keeping up with your properties. And sometimes, pressure. I always like to look for these areas that, even if on the individual farm that I might have been hunting all year, there might be that area that, well, I hadn't really hardly walked over there or hunted over there any this year. Look for those areas, because the deer are finding them. They're going to be pushed in these corners. I mean, they're going to find these unpressured areas throughout the year, and even inside a particular farm that you hunt all year, that and go to those spots this time of year. Some of those places maybe not typically are the best spots to hunt, but they might be now.
They might be getting that way now. And one thing too, you mentioned pressure. I think that's a big word for me this time of year too, because your hunting pressure is a lot less. Rifle season kicks off, muzzleloader kicks off, everybody's in the woods. Grandpa's out there, Dad, everybody's out there hunting. And a lot of them get there, a lot of them go ahead and get their deer, so on and so forth, and they're out of the woods now. So also something else I love about this late season, you don't have near as much pressure around you. The other farms around you they're not hunting nearly as hard. It's most of your hardcore guys out there right now. So I think that makes another big addition to this late season hunting. So, well guys, we've been trying to give several tips, but let's head over right now and give the official tip of the week. This week's tip of the week being sponsored by our buddy Wes Stone over at Crylite Real Estate Services. Y'all can find him at 1432 West Main Street in Lebanon, Tennessee, or give Wes a call there at his office, 615-444-8200, and let him take care of all your real estate needs. He's a pretty good dude, ain't he?
He's all right.
He's all right.
Going back, we kind of hit on what I was going to do on tip of the week. Actually, what we talked about here, but it was the late season. Stay, persistent. This is a time of year, if you do have the food sources, you might see a buck that you hadn't seen all year.
Yeah.
Or, traveling, they're going to be looking for that food too, especially if we get some hard weather. So, you're going to see the biggest deer like killed on the group page.
Yep.
This is when the big ones get killed.
The next
so stay
couple of weeks.
persistent. Time your days. Especially if you got food plots.
Yep.
Time your days.
Still
right
play your
when.
win.
If you can hit those cold fronts, still be patient, but it's got a lot of good hunting. We got 2 weeks
It ain't over yet. It ain't over
My old
yet.
saying is not over till it's over.
That's
you
right.
know. So.
It definitely isn't over. Well, guys, we're gonna get ready to take another quick break. We'll be right back here in just a minute with some more Southern with the Water.